Hello everybody, my name is Professor Rich. In this video, you'll learn about irregular verbs in English. We will learn the forms, how they are different, and why irregular verbs exist. Irregular verbs are actually very simple, and I'm confident you'll see that in the next 30 minutes. Okay, so let's begin. What are irregular verbs? Listen carefully because there's some questions to answer after. So what are irregular verbs? And hello to everybody who's joining us live. How's it going, folks? In order to think about irregular verbs, we might think first, what is a regular verb? So, a regular verb are verbs like this. Regular verbs have easy forms. And we can see the forms here. The base form, so walk, like, hate. These are regular verbs. And we see the third person, walks, likes, hates. So to form the third person, most of the time, with regular verbs, we just add a s sound. Sometimes the spelling can be a little different, but the pronunciation, we just add s. So walk, walks. The past and the past participle, very easy. Simply add ed. Walked, liked, hated. And you can see there, that's pretty regular, simple rule to form those irregular verbs. So, irregular verbs. Irregular verbs look weird. When we compare irregular verbs to regular verbs, they look weird, right? Be, the third person is, the past was, were, and the past participle been. That's very different than walk, walks, walked, walked. Be, is, was, were, been. Okay. And for have, has, had, had. So have looks a little more like it, but it's still a bit weird. Not haves, but has. And not haved, but had. Although we can see some similarity there, still irregular. So irregular verb forms look weird. Another thing about irregular verb forms is they're common. So many irregular verbs are very common verbs. Actually, most irregular verbs are common verbs. Like be, have, do, become, come, get, go, make. These are common verbs, and they are all irregular. This, of course, also means that uncommon verbs or rare verbs are almost always regular. So if you see a strange verb that you haven't seen before, 99.999999% of the time, it's gonna be regular because it's not a common verb. So, where do irregular verbs come from? Irregular verbs are from Old English. So irregular verbs are kind of old-fashioned. So be, bern, and wessen. Wessen for like was, and baun for been. Be, baun, wessen, or maybe wessen, because Old English is very Germanic language. Baun, wessen, right? It sounds almost German. And words like no from this, which is a Celtic word. I don't know how you say this. I guess it's something like naun. I don't know. I don't know how you say that. But that's an Old English word anyway. And this is where we get irregular verbs from. They're from Old English. Now, irregular verbs do follow some rules. They follow some patterns. So, for example, they have these vowel change patterns like I, A, U. So, sing, sang, sung, ring, rang, rung, drink, drank, drunk. That's the I, A, U pattern. We also have the I, A, O pattern. Begin, began, begun. Swim, swam, swum. And the IAE pattern. Drive, drove, driven. Ride, rode, ridden. So there's some patterns there. We also have irregular verbs that don't change. Put. Every day I put my coffee on my desk. Yesterday I put my coffee on my desk. Have you put your coffee on your desk yet? So we have put, set, let. There's a few of these no change verbs with 3 letters. And there are other patterns as well. The best way to learn those is to look out for them and just learn them from experience. There aren't that many irregular verbs in English, just a few hundred. I know that seems crazy, but a few hundred is not that much, actually. So it doesn't take that long to get used to them. Another thing to mention about irregular verbs is there is a trend towards regularization. This means that in general, verbs are going more towards being regular. Now, will this continue? Difficult to say, because regularization is caused by standardization. And whether there will be more standardization of English or less is difficult to say. However, in the past few hundred years, we have seen a trend towards regularization. And we can see that here with these forms. Burnt is the participle of burn in the UK, but in the US they prefer burned, which is it makes burn into a regular verb. The same for learnt and learned, dreamt and dreamed in the US. And you can, of course, use these forms in the UK as well, and they sound okay. These ones sound very British to the Americans. However, some American writers will use these forms on the left, the irregular forms, because they want to sound more poetic or old-fashioned. All right, so I hope you've been listening. Now I'm going to give you a quiz. Let's see how you can do with this. Are you ready? So I want you to read these statements and correct the false statements. There are 6 statements. They are all false. I want you to correct the false statements. If you're watching us live, you can type your answers now in the chat on the right. And if you're watching this video later, then first of all, smash that like button and hit subscribe to the channel. And also, you can write your answers down on a piece of paper. I suggest that you pause the video and do that now. Actually taking part in this activity and writing down can really help your learning. I'll read those statements now. Remember, these statements are false and I want you to correct them. Number 1, regular verbs are the most frequent type of verb. Number 2, irregular verbs come from modern American English. Number 3, traditional classic English is more regular. Number 4, irregular verb forms don't have any rules. Number 5, regular verb forms have the same spelling rules. And number 6, if you see a new verb, it's probably irregular. So type your answers in the chat if you're watching us live. And if you're watching the video later, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and write your answers down on a piece of paper. And I will give you the answers to these statements in about 1 minute while I enjoy a cup of coffee because I've been talking for 20 minutes without a break. Ooh, that's strong. Did I really need that? Did I really need that? Sorry to highlight you, Aulia, with number 1, but all of these statements are false, so you need to correct them. They all need a correction. So all these statements are wrong, and I want a correction. All right? Oh, I can see what you mean, though. I've written that quite badly. Now I feel embarrassed. What am I doing? Regular verbs are the most frequent type of verb. Didn't do a very good job with that, did I? Because that can be interpreted in the wrong way. But, okay, let's see if you were paying attention. I'll give you another 30 seconds to think about this. And I'll give you some clues here. All right, let's go through some answers. So, for number 1, irregular verbs are the most commonly used verbs in English. So, for example, be, have, do, get, say. They are all irregular. Be, have, do, get, say. And actually, in all languages, usually, the most common verbs, like be, are irregular. Irregular verb forms come from Old English and modern American English is more regular. Irregular verb forms have some patterns. They have some patterns. So they do all follow some kind of rules, some kind of patterns. Regular verb forms have the same pronunciation rules. So you have to be careful with the spelling because there are some weird spelling, right? Like we have things like fly goes to flies, although fly is actually irregular, so that's a bad example. Good one, Rich. Can I think of a better one? Thinking of vocabulary on the spot, live. It's always the best approach. No, I can't. Fantastic. Okay, well, there are some ones where you have to add ES in the third person, for example, instead of just adding S. So it's not that they have the same spelling rules, but it's more that they have the same pronunciation rules. Remember that writing came later in the language. So first comes speaking, and then we put writing on top of speaking. So speaking comes first, actually, in all kinds of communication. And then writing is more of an invention that humans put on top of that. If you see a new verb, it's almost certainly, let's change that to almost certainly, regular. Because the vast majority of verbs are regular, and any uncommon verbs are almost certainly regular. Because the common verbs are regular. All right. So let's move on to our next activity. We're going to do a little listening here. We're going to listen to an audio. This is an audio of a story. It's a real story from my life. A real story that happened about 16 years ago. Do you know what story I'm talking about? So this story involves me and one other person, and we did something 16 years ago. We made a big change in our lives. What do you think I'm talking about? Let me show you a picture, and maybe you can start to think what that might be about. This is an artist's impression of this story. Actually, it's ChatGPT's impression of the story. This is a story that happened 16 years ago. So I'm going to play the audio and I want you to listen to the story. What's it about and what happens? Ready? Go. I remember the winter of 2007 was one of the coldest I had ever experienced. I became sick of the weather in the UK, and I knew I wanted to do something different. I made the decision to move to another country. I wanted to go to a country where the weather was warmer. I had some other requirements as well. I spoke to many of my friends, and one of them, Neil, said that he also would like to move to another country just to try it. So me and my friend Neil decided to go to Spain together. In July 2008, we left the UK and we drove to Spain in my Ford Fiesta. We sold most of our possessions at the time, and everything else we took with us in the car. It was quite an adventure, actually. We wrote a blog talking about the things that we did and to keep in touch with friends and family. That began a new chapter in my life. It meant that I became an English teacher. And the following few years taught me many lessons. All right, everybody. So what was the story and what happens? Pallavi rightly pointed out that I'm sounding quite sad in that picture. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because I recorded it at 8 o'clock this morning and I was sad because I got up at 8 o'clock this morning. I don't know. I don't know. So what happened in the story? What's the story about? Type your answers now in the chat. I think the picture's not too bad. The guy on the left is supposed to be me. Obviously, he looks more like Jack Nicholson. And the guy on the right is supposed to be Neil. That actually looks quite a lot like Neil, I have to say, especially at the time. He really looked a lot like that, actually. Because he used to have red hair. And yeah, that's kind of his nose and his mouth, actually. Change in the path of life. Wow, that sounds really dramatic, Shimi, but yeah, something like that. Oh, well done, Lila. You became a teacher in Spain. Rich and his friend's journey to move to Spain. You went with your friend, and it's the way you decided to become a teacher. Prof. Richard's decision to leave England and move to Spain in the winter of 2007. You got sick of the weather in the UK and took the risk to move to another country. Well done. By the way, I'm not sure I would recommend this to anyone now. I think it was the right moment to do that. But the way we did it was a little bit reckless. But, you know, we had some money saved up and I thought, well, if it doesn't work, I'll go back to the UK, no problem. But it worked. Now, I'm not sure the economic situation is great for that. Although, to be honest, the economic situation in 2008 in Spain was pretty bad as well. Anyway, we're going to have a listen again. And this time, I want you to focus on the irregular verbs. So, listen for the irregular verbs that you hear, and I'd like you to write down the irregular verbs. There are 16 different irregular verbs in the recording. Some of them you will hear 2 or 3 times. So see if you can hear the 16 different verbs in the recording. Let's have a listen. I remember the winter of 2007 was one of the coldest I had ever experienced. I became sick of the weather in the UK and I knew I wanted to do something different. I made the decision to move to another country. I wanted to go to a country where the weather was warmer. I had some other requirements as well. I spoke to many of my friends, and one of them, Neil, said that he also would like to move to another country just to try it. So me and my friend Neil decided to go to Spain together. In July 2008, we left the UK and we drove to Spain in my Ford Fiesta. We sold most of our possessions at the time and everything else we took with us in the car. It was quite an adventure, actually. We wrote a blog talking about the things that we did and to keep in touch with friends and family. That began a new chapter in my life. It meant that I became an English teacher. And the following few years taught me many lessons. I remember. All right, marvelous. So lots of different answers in the chat there. Well done for that. Remembered is a regular verb, Julia, but otherwise very good. And we've got all kinds of answers coming in there. Fantastic. Well done, folks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, wanted is regular and decided is also regular. All right, let me show you the answers. So here's the answers as far as I got it. So I lied. There are 14 irregular verbs in the audio, and some of them you can hear 2 or 3 times. And here they are. Was, had, became, knew, made, spoke, said, left, drove, sold, took, wrote, began, and taught. And they were all the ones in the audio. I don't think anyone got them all, but some people were very close. So well done for that. And take note of those ones that you missed. Are there any of those that you wish to ask about while we're on the page? And there was an interesting question before, actually, from Aulia, who says, is Neil still in Spain? No, actually, Neil left Spain before me. So Neil stayed in Spain for just under 3 years, and I stayed for 9 years. So Neil left after 3 years, and he went to Canada. And he stayed in Canada for 2 years, where he met a lady who became his wife. And together they moved to Korea and China. And he taught in Korea and China for about 6 years. And then finally moved back to Canada. And you can find all about Neil's adventures on his channel, Team Teacher China. So you can search YouTube for Team Teacher China, and you can see about his adventures in China with his wife. And now I host a podcast with Neil called ELT Under the Covers. Oh, well done, Lila. Not so sure. Oh, you've wrote them in the infinitive as well. Nice. That's quite fancy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think there must be some regular ones in there. 18 doesn't sound quite right. Can't see them though. What am I missing here? Have you invented some? I don't know. Maybe I just miscounted. This is some strong coffee. British people marry foreigners. Excuse me? What are you talking about? I tell you what, language teachers marry foreigners because language teachers tend to be quite open and travel a lot and things like that. So I think that's probably why that happens, Pilavi. If you think about it, most people from a country stay in the country, don't travel abroad. So, of course, they are more likely to marry someone of their own nationality. But language teachers live in many different countries. Right, so let's move on. Let's move on to our reflection today. It's always important to reflect after a class, and this is something we're going to start doing in every stream. So, reflecting, what's the main point you've learnt today, and what do you need more practice with after today? So, I'd like you to type in the chat, what is the main point you've learnt in today's class? Maybe it's a specific verb that you've learnt, or maybe it's an idea about irregular verbs that you didn't think before. And what do you think you need more practice with today? What did today's class show you that you need more practice with? Let's see what you folks say in the chat. wasn't exactly that I went there as a traveller, so to speak, Pallavi. I went there with the intention of getting a job and living there. However, I had considered that if things don't work, then after a few years I'd move back. But we were really intent on staying, not coming back. It was really exciting, I have to say. It was just the right time to do it, though. Just the right time to do it. The main point, said, are irregular. I thought they were regular. Yeah. Basically, Aulia, if you can't make the past form with ed, then probably it's irregular. I need to review some irregular verbs, says Sonia. Any in particular, Sonia, that you need to review? Are there any in particular that seem a bit weird to you? I would say if you learn the most common 100 irregular verbs, you've got it. If you learn the top 10, great. Teach. Oh, yeah. Well, there's a few that I like. Teach. Teach. Teachers. Taught. Taught. So what have we got that's a bit similar to that? I think catch is a little bit similar, isn't it? So catch, catches, caught and caught. It's quite similar to teach. What else do we have? To some extent, a little bit less similar, but to some extent we got fight, buy, but you might consider those different. Also, if we want to get fancy with seek, seeks, sort, and sort. Can't think of any of those right now. But looking for these patterns is a really good way of getting accustomed to irregular verbs. As far as I knew, make, made, made is a regular verb. No. No. That's irregular for sure. That's totally irregular. Because if it was regular, Julia, it would be make, makes, maked, maked. Right? I've maked you a cake. Oh, I've naked. I've maked you a cake. Right? But of course, it's I've made you a cake, right? And I've maked is incorrect. It's the kind of thing that children sometimes say, I've made you a cake. It's wrong. So we can know that it's not regular by testing it like that. Alia says, I need more practice with the listening. Did you find the listening difficult today, Alia? I made the listening quite slow today. I'm trying something a bit slower. At some point, I will have a system for this, but basically, I want to do 2 types of stream. I want to do a stream intended for new viewers to bring people to the channel, and then I want to do streams for regular viewers. And I'm thinking about how to do that. Like, it might be that on one day, Wednesday or Saturday, I do the streams that bring people in, like this one. Stuff like this brings new subscribers in. And then on the other day, I'll do streams more about philosophy and wildly difficult stuff that people on the channel love. So what I mean by common, Shimi, is that the most common verbs are irregular, but irregular verbs themselves are not common because the vast majority of verbs in English are regular. There are only a few irregular verbs, but those few irregular verbs are very common verbs like be, do, have, and make. Yep, that's right, Takeshi. And you have used an irregular verb in that sentence. You said thought, which is irregular. Not quite sure what you mean, Alexander. Can you pronounce these in slow motion? You mean all the irregular verbs, Pallavi? Do you mean these? The past simple irregular verbs? Of course, I can. If that's what you mean, can you just tell me if that's what you mean? Is that what you mean, Pallavi? Do you want me to pronounce all of these verbs? Or are you talking about something else? It's not a coffee machine. It's a coffee cup. This is not a coffee machine. It's just a fancy coffee cup. It keeps the coffee warm, right? It's like a flask, but it's just a cup. And it keeps the coffee very warm. It's great. It's black on the inside and silver on the outside to keep the coffee warm. I'm not quite sure what all that stuff is on the bottom, though. It's like some paper has been burnt onto the cup. I only just noticed that. Yeah, well, clean that off. The one on the other slide, Well, this one. Teach, teachers, taught. Catch, catchers, caught. Fight, fights, fought. Buy, buys, bought. Seek, seeks, sought. If I talk to someone and they don't understand irregular verbs, should I say another one like learned, learnt, or dived, dove? If you're speaking to a native, it is not possible that they will not understand irregular verbs. If you're speaking to a non-native, I mean, there are many strategies for clarification with someone who doesn't have strong English skills. And of course, one strategy is say the infinitive. So if you say like, oh, yesterday I went to the shop and I bought a coffee. You what? A coffee? Bought? What's that? Buy. Yesterday, I buy a coffee yesterday. Right? So you need to use strategies like that sometimes to communicate with non-native speakers. That is a communication strategy. There's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't bother saying the regular form myself. I don't think that will help. Better that you just say the infinitive. But saying the infinitive it's a useful communication strategy for people who can't understand you. And good communicators do this all the time. Yeah, that's true, Takeshi. That is true. And that's true for actually basically everything in the language. But luckily, with irregular verbs, they are the most common verbs in the language. So you can easily get used to the top 100 and then you're done. Keith's Speaking Academy. Yeah, I do like that guy. There's a few YouTubers out there I like. Not many, to be honest with you. There are not many good YouTube teachers out there. But Keith's all right. Keith, if you want to talk, send me an email. We'll talk. I know. I'm kind of a big deal. You probably think I don't have time for you because, you know, Professor Rich and everything. But send me an email, Keith. We'll talk. I am, of course, joking. So it would be amazing to speak to Keith. I would be happy to do that. It's okay, teacher. I'll watch it again to get exactly what you said. All right, great, Pallavi, because I lost you there. You'd rather use cups with aluminium in the inside. I think that's an interesting perspective, Lila. You might have a point. There is some discussion about using plastic at the moment, and people are saying that we should avoid plastic as much as possible. So you might be right with that. Maybe I should change my cup. It's a shame because actually I really like this cup. But you might have a point. All right, folks. So final little fun task here. Can you name 10 irregular verbs which weren't in today's, with an apostrophe, class? Type your answers in the chat. Can you name 10 irregular verbs which weren't in today's class? Very good. Keith still lives in Spain. Spain is actually the most popular country in the world for language teachers. There are more English language teachers in Spain than anywhere else in the world. Shimi says sold. And Januthi. Hello, Januthi. Says choose. Choose. That's a good one. Freeze. That's a really good one. That's quite an unusual one. 8. Wrote. Wrote was in the recording, right? We wrote a blog. No? Built, brought, caught. We talked about caught a moment ago. Drew. And Sunshine, now known as Sunshine, says, it's impossible to avoid plastic, especially when people use polyester to make clothes in order to cut costs. Well, you don't need to cut costs, though, do you? Because you could only buy cotton clothes. Like, this shirt is cotton. There's no polyester. To be fair, I have lots of clothes with polyester. Seek was also in the chat, in the class. Sent. Well done. All right, folks. So do remember that there is a homework assignment. This is from the previous class, and it is for Saturday. The idea is to plan a how-to presentation. Choose a topic, make notes to give a 3 to 4 minute presentation involving a process or list of step-by-step instructions. Don't write a script, just use notes, record your audio and send it to me on Discord. Here are some examples: how to bake a French cake, how to get by in Thailand, how to make friends with people in Tenerife, how to travel around India in 48 hours with only one elephant, etc., etc. We already did question time, but if anyone has any questions for me about English learning, about education, or about today's class, you can type those in the chat right now and I'll do my best to answer. If not, you can download the notes from today's class, and the link to do that is now in the chat, and in just a moment it will be down below the video. I would, of course, like to thank you all for joining the class today. If you would like to show your financial support, you can click the link down below the video where it says something like buy Rich a coffee or something like that. Give me a tip or something. And that is very much appreciated, but not necessary. Just by coming to the class and smashing that like button, leaving a comment and all that, I very much appreciate it. I also do appreciate requests for classes which you're really interested in. Anything about English language, learning, education, or a topic that you think I could do a good class on, I would be interested in hearing. I don't know about that, Pallavi. Ooh, Takeshi, look at that. Oh, that's good. Look at that. It's been very clever there, Takeshi, with undergo and overcome. So yeah, if you think of verbs like go and come, and then you put some prefixes there, you can make all kinds of different irregular verbs. Well done. What does this mean? What does this sentence mean? You're in my bones. You're in my bones. I'm not sure about you're in my bones. I don't really know what that means, but it's in my bones, or it's in our bones, or his or her or whatever's bones, whoever's, means it's something your family has done, or your family or nationality or culture has done for generations and is good at. So if you say it's in your bones, then it means like it's in. We tend to say blood. Actually, it's in our blood rather than it's in our bones. I'm not quite sure about this. You're in my bones, though. Etc. Etc. Actually, there's two ways, isn't there? There's etc., 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 and etc., which is this. Etc., etc. So you can say etc., or you can say etc. Either of those are fine. Etc. Etc. Yeah, they're both fine. They're both good. Did you start earlier than usual in the last stream? Yeah, I did. You have to just look sometimes at the time. I can't always do the same time, but the standard timings are below the video in UK time, and that's what I try to do. But sometimes I need to move streams around. Why didn't you, Richard, why didn't you focus on one level English, then gradually teach other levels? I think it's hard for a new student to keep track of your class if they're beginners. Yeah. That's an interesting point, Daisy. I think there's a few things about that. I think, first of all, I did try doing level relevant or mainly level dependent material a long time ago, and I didn't enjoy doing it. And the thing is that the main point about doing something like YouTube is you have to enjoy it. Because if I don't enjoy it, then it's the end. That's it. It's over, right? There's no way that you can do this. And I don't mean teaching. I mean YouTube teaching or just YouTube. There is no way you can do it if you're not enjoying it. It's just not going to happen, because the amount of work that is required to put a class together twice a week and come on and stream. If I didn't enjoy it, whoosh, it would be dead years ago. So, yeah. Now, I think it is a fair point that the levels are a bit here and there. However, I think people can testify in the chat that they find it useful if it's easy or if it's difficult. So it doesn't, to some extent, it doesn't really matter. Like the idea that there is a special thing to learn at each level is not strictly true. And my teaching in the classroom is a bit like that as well. Like there's some idea that you have to learn be going to before you learn gonna. But that's not true, and that's not how I teach in the classroom. So there's that point. What you're arguing for, by the way, Daisy, is called additive learning. And most research indicates that additive learning is not effective in language teaching. Actually, that's wrong. Sorry. It is effective, but it's less effective than communicative-based learning. So rather than saying, today we do present simple, tomorrow it's the present continuous, the next day it's past simple, and then it's past continuous, we get rid of that, and instead we have communicative tasks, and we just teach or learn whatever language comes from those tasks is much more useful. Because the reality is different students will integrate different grammar and phrases at different times. And it's not possible to have a structured syllabus which works for everyone. In fact, structured syllabus don't fit anyone, not a single student. You can see it because you ask a student, oh, do you know the present perfect? And they say, yeah, I know all this, yeah. Okay, now use it. And they'll talk and make like tons of mistakes with it and say, oh, I've been learning this for 6 years I've done 20 classes on this and I keep making mistakes. It's because people don't learn languages like that. Communication's a skill, and you need to practice and integrate and practice and integrate. You don't learn it by studying step like that. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a good point, Daisy. I think in general, the audience here is advanced, right? I think we are an advanced class on YouTube. When I do a video like today, where I made it a bit easier, the aim actually is to attract new subscribers. Because in general, it's easier to attract subscribers with an easier class. As in, new people get scared off by difficult things. But if you're watching Prof Rich English, you're one of the advanced learners on YouTube. I'm not sure there's many language classes, there's many language teachers out there actually who aim at a more advanced level than us, in my opinion. But to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time watching teachers on YouTube. I do try to. I try to because I want to see what people are doing. And I occasionally find very good people, very interesting people who I agree with. But yeah, we're advanced, Daisy. This is welcome to the advanced club. I'm definitely not aiming at beginners. And when I do something like the passive, when I do something like irregular verbs, which you think, well, irregular verbs, that's a bit easy. It's about consolidation. Because, I know people in the chat like Aulia and Lila and Pallavi, I know that they have like B2 going on to C1 level English. Particularly in the case of, I think, was it Lila who sent in a recording, who had very, very good, like high C1 English. But even them, they benefit somewhat from this consolidation of, for example, irregular verbs. So we still have a rationale for it, but the aim of the channel is advanced, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, Pallavi. It's tough because of your age as well. When you're young, there's lots of things to learn about being sociable and comfort zones and stuff. And it's difficult for anyone, actually. Even, older people get very nervous speaking another language as well. It's not easy to get out there and do it. I think it's something that Daisy's good at, right? Daisy did a lot of socializing with English speakers. And I think that's a great thing to do. But it's tough. It's not easy to go out and socialize, especially if it's not your personality. Would you like to do interactive teaching where the students can join you during a live session and talk directly to you? Alia, we tried that and it went horribly wrong. So I tried that using our Discord, which I think is the best way of doing it because it was the best way to manage it. But no one could get it working. I could try it with Zoom. It's true. It might work better with Zoom, actually. Could I do it with Zoom? Yeah, I could. We could do that. Let's pencil that in. The thing is about Zoom is it's more difficult to monitor. So, for example, you could make an account on Zoom, change your name to Pallavi, join the Zoom, and then I go, okay, and ding, who knows who comes up? Could be anyone, right? Saying anything. Whereas on Discord, I know who you are. because you have to be verified on the server. So that's why Discord is safer. Another thing I could do is I could do the Zoom, but I will only post the invite information on the Discord server. So it's not public. And then anyone on the Discord could join. That's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that. You want to do that? I'm happy to do that. Of course, that's true, Pallavi, but I do understand Sunshine's point that aiming for more of a niche is better. And there's a big question, isn't there, about what is the niche of Prof Rich English? It's something a bit wild, that's for sure. We are out there. We got the weirdo topics like aliens and simulation arguments and stuff like that. And I enjoy that stuff. So we're definitely on the fringe of interesting stuff. Pirates. Remember the pirates class? That was great, right? It got copyright claim, that one. It's a shame. I used like three minutes of the video. I don't think that should be copyright claimed. It was annoying. Well, camera actually would not be a thing, Sunshine. So I would only do audio for the student. I don't expect anyone to use a camera. In fact, I think it's better without. I think just audio is fine. We can do that. Of course, there is a very popular channel on YouTube which does live streams like 10 times a week that already kind of does that, right? What's the guy's name? Adrian, I think. Domenico Lafauci loves him. He's always watching him, right? And there's a few other people who come in and out of his streams. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what I can offer that Adrian doesn't already offer. You know what I mean? Like, he's pretty good at what he does, right? And we could try it. But that guy works hard, eh? He's streaming like 10 times a week, doing live corrections with students, you know? Well, me as the host, I can just disable all of the cameras, which I will do, because actually I don't think I want cameras. Just audio is okay. I think if we start inviting cameras, we get a different thing, and I don't think it's necessary or really that useful or helpful. It's scary enough to speak with just audio, and I don't want to put the pressure on anyone that they might feel they need to use a camera. All right. Well, I'll look into that. Let's think about doing that then in the next week or so. I will have a class where people can join Zoom. We sometimes stream at the same time. We definitely sometimes stream at the same time. For sure. And on Saturday, I think, sometimes. Maybe he changed his schedule, but we definitely used to. We definitely used to. Because I have a bunch of students who watch his stuff, and sometimes they'll be with me and sometimes they're with him, depending on their mood. Domenico Lafauci being one. Right then, folks. I think that's all for today, isn't it? All right, thank you very much for watching. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and enjoy the rest of your week. I think after today's class, maybe we'll go for something a bit spicy on Saturday. Something a little bit out there. Like how to describe your pet's thoughts in English using the passive. A lovely dinner of sweet-smelling fish was dreamed about by Ginger and Pepper. All right, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, say hello to your friends and all the rest of it. What's going on? My brain's not working at all. I'll see you next time, folks.